All right, welcome back. Let's get into the Voters' Hub now. From fuel to milk to water, shortage has become the reality for Kenyans. Queues and frustration from Kenyans have been met by blame games and grandstanding on the campaign trail by the political class. At a time when political parties are refining their choice, candidates with slightly over 100 days left to go until the general election, what should the voter be taking into account? Who should they lobby during a time of crisis? Well, this is the Voters' Hub, and the conversation starts right now. Let me introduce my panel really quickly. To my left is Joel Mwita, the chairman of the IEBC Youth Coordinating Committee. To my right, Ruth Bolo, chairperson for the International Relations Committee, Young Democrat Union of Africa. Last but not least, joining us virtually from Migori is Steve Biko Wafula, entrepreneur and lawyer. Steve, you are the furthest from us, but let me start with you. In terms of this fuel crisis, several reasons were thrown out from different parties, whether it was from the government or the oil marketers. And, you heard things like it was panic buying by consumers or logistical issues, government saying it was the oil marketers who were hoarding. How did we get to this point? Who is to blame, really, when you look at this crisis?
Vicky, thank you very much for the opportunity. As you said, I'm in Migori, and basically this is a cumulative issue that has taken 9 years for us to get here. This is one, bad policies by the current administration. One of the reasons why I'm saying it's bad policies is because we are running we are running subsidy programs that, one, are not entrenched in law, that, two, cannot be supported by the current economic situation that we have, and three, basically, we have a government that has a bottomless appetite for increasing revenues, yet they do not account for the money, and yet they do not really facilitate the economy to grow for people to be able to pay more taxes. So we are seeing a situation whereby, on one hand, the government has increased taxes greatly across almost every product. Then on the other hand, it's running subsidies to be able to cushion the Kenyan public. This is an oxymoron situation. It clearly shows that the Kenyan civil servants are not thinking clearly. It shows that the Kenyan civil servants do not want to think and actually be able to create long-term sustainable solutions. And the most disturbing issue is that the subsidy programs we are running are not entrenched in law. So every time we need money to pay the fuel people or even the farmers for fertilizers, we have to go to parliament and take such a long process. And this is what has led to us where we are. For example, the landing cost for fuel for both petrol, diesel, and kerosene in March was 43 shillings, between 43 shillings and 48 shillings, landing cost. But we remember in March we were buying fuel at almost 130 shillings. So you're seeing taxes. I mean, you've seen the government increasing the cost of fuel almost 4 times. This is unacceptable. This is unheard of. And this money that the government is actually collecting is not enough. So you're seeing more people stopping to spend to fuel their cars. We're seeing manufacturers actually reducing their cost of production. Yeah. The level of production, so that they can be able to keep afloat, because many businesses actually are operating in a loss-making situation.
Okay, and so, on that, Steve, let me bring Ruth in really quickly, because many Kenyans are asking, how was government held ransom by the oil marketers for this long? And the question really is, how sure that this won't happen again, even though they are saying, they are trying to rectify the situation and pay off at least this debt in terms of the fuel subsidy. But are we so sure that we won't be left hanging to dry the next time this happens by another sector? It may not be oil marketers the next time.
Thank you, Vicky, for having us again. I think where we are at as Kenyans is you can't be sure about anything with the government. And there's something that's been going around where Kenyans are saying, the minute we put our masks down, we are picking up empty bottles to go and look for fuel. The minute we are done with that, there'll be another issue. So Kenyans are now tired and sort of ready, and we are accepting whatever is coming next, which is so sad because that shouldn't be the problem. Number one, we need to accept that these are also people who are in business. We do not want to make them suffer just because they are giving us a service. When government promises some subsidies, number one, they should be able to fulfill that. And number two, they should be able to put in place, like Steve has said, the proper policies to ensure they see this through. But number two, we also need to start looking at homegrown solutions. Look at solar, for example. I was impressed the other day that we now have refrigerators that are solar-based. But what happened the minute Kenyans started putting in solar? We were putting in all sorts of moratoriums and all sorts of things just to discourage Kenyans and discourage people from being able to put in solar, instead of actually going ahead and incentivizing them for them to be able to afford that. So because these people who are also in business and they need a livelihood have realized that we depend on them for so much, and hence the ripple effect that a number of our production costs are high. Once they realize that, I mean, they can't do anything because they are the sole service providers. So we need to diversify. We need to look at what are the other solutions that we can have. And also, we also need to be very honest and ask ourselves, where did we go wrong? What exactly happened? How did we get here? What happened to the oil that was in Turkana? Yes, it was not enough to sustain us, but what could have been done differently? The British farm that was here, why did they leave? Those are the kind of questions that we need to ask ourselves. And like I've always said, as Kenyans, when someone comes to tell us something, the first question we should ask them is, how are you going to implement this? Because we are so quick to be excited, and that's why they can always promise subsidies and things like that, but we never ask them, how are you going to do it? So what happens is that these issues catch up with us later on, because now we sit and say, okay, we promised this, but we can't do it. And service providers are then putting our economy at a standstill because they also need to be able to recover what they have used. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, Joel, let me bring you in there, because whenever we face a crisis of this magnitude, many times, I mean, if it comes during an election year, it's used as a campaigning tool. And many times politicians will twist it, spin it for their advantage. And you wonder, you know, with all the political posturing, the grandstanding, who is speaking for the Kenyans? You know, who has their interests at heart at the end of the day?
Thank you so much, Vicky. I think it is time for Kenyans now to speak by themselves through the ballot that you are going to have in August 9th. And this particular issue has not come or has not started now. I remember and what I've been also reading and also trying to just get the source of this particular problem. In 1970s, to be particular, in 1973, 1974, 1979 to 1980, there were a lot of crises on fuel. And during that particular time, 1981, the government set aside and formed a state parastatal called the National Oil Company. This particular parastatal was tasked to ensure that, number one, they have enough reserve to ensure that they caution Kenyans in terms of where they find crisis. And we've seen this happening in US, whereby this crisis has started and they were able to remove 180 million barrels of oil to caution its customers. Second, there is an issue. Every time a Kenyan goes to a petrol station, when he fuels, there is some certain amount of money put aside by the fund, a Kenyan fund, so that to caution the Kenyans when it reaches a time where there is fluctuation in fuel prices, then that particular fund is removed and caution Kenyans. Now, we need to ask ourselves, where did that particular money go to? Lastly, it is also the issue of mismanagement of our oil company, that is the National Oil, because there is no way we can reach up to this particular time that the National Oil is not aware, has not taken proper measures to ensure that we have enough oil, and we are putting a crisis to this Republic of Kenya, whereby a lot of things are going to hike, even in terms of how the primaries have been conducted. The budget which was put, it is not how it ended up. I'm very sure the ODM, KANU, Jubilee, UDA have found it very difficult to conduct those primaries because of the crisis that we have in the oil industry. So I think as Kenyans, this is not a problem that comes in an electioneering period, but this is something that needs to be cured by our own parastatal, but it is us Kenyans who will be the source of the solution to these problems.
And Steve, you know, you mentioned earlier on bad policies, too much bureaucracy, especially when it comes to dealing with these issues, sometimes having to go to Parliament to get clearance. But, you know, when you look at the subsidy system, is it helpful? You know, do we need to change the pricing mechanism, for instance? Is it effective enough? What should change to avoid this from happening in the future?
Thank you, Vicky. Two issues. One, the government needs to stop governing by threats. I mean, the biggest problem we have today is not because the oil market has held the government hostage. They've been selling fuel at a loss. They did not have money to actually bring in new stock. Government was not giving them money because government didn't have the money. So it does not make sense for government to have so high taxes on fuel products and then at the same time give subsidies. So these subsidies are not working. They're not sustainable. That is one. We need to do away with them. Two, if we need to have them in place, then we need to go to Parliament and have structured ways to ensure that subsidies is actually working, and there's a reason why they're working. And this is where a company like National Oil will come in place, whereby we will look at a way of how do we fuel and how do we give support to National Oil Company in regards to subsidies. So for us to be able to understand and enjoy the subsidy program, just not only in regards to fuel, but also in terms of agriculture, because these are actually important in cushioning Kenyans in regards to the high cost of living. We need to have the right laws in place to reduce bureaucracy, to ensure accountability, and to ensure smooth flow of issues. We need to understand that a lot of things are happening across the globe. Supply chains are being disrupted. So every country needs to learn how to be self-sufficient. I mean, one of the guests has actually spoken about the oil in Turkana. Yes, we found oil in Turkana. But what happened to our refinery in Mombasa? It's dead. We have sitting dead stock in Mombasa. If the refinery was working, we would not be having this problem. If National Oil was working, we would not be having this problem. If the National Parliament was actually doing its job, we would not be having this problem. So the issue is not really the oil marketers. The issue is the government and its bureaucracy and managing things via threats. And things cannot actually work like that. And going forward, what needs to be done before we actually entrench the programs into the law? Let liberalize the market in terms of remove price controls, because as long as Ukraine and Russia are fighting, as long as global supply chains are being constrained, as long as China is shutting down key towns because of COVID, as long as we continue having toxic politics and rising geopolitical tensions across the globe, globalization as we know it is changing, meaning that every country must be self-sufficient, meaning that we actually need to let markets be free and let markets adjust themselves. If you look at what central bank is doing to the Kenyan shilling, it's been doing everything to stabilize the Kenyan shillings, but actually it's gotten to a point whereby it's not possible. In another 2-3 weeks, we'll be looking at $1 to 120 shillings to the Kenyan shilling. The economy, our macro aspect of our economy is actually off. Agriculture is not functioning, manufacturing is not functioning, production is not functioning. We are a net import economy. This needs to change if things are actually to be positive. So here, it's not about Kenyans speaking for themselves. We speak, then what happens? Nothing. Here we need to have institutions and systems that work. Here we need Parliament to step in and actually do the right thing.
So let me have Ruth come in there. You know, if Kenyans can't only speak by themselves, and yes, we can blame politicians at times for being self-serving, but politics serves a purpose at times. And I wonder, Ruth, you know, the lack of a strong, defined opposition at play, do you feel that also added to the fact that government was a bit slow in responding in this situation?
Absolutely. You know, in every sentence that Steve was saying, he ended it with two things. Either it is not functioning or it is not working. And I'm asking myself, why am I as a Kenyan paying taxes to a government that is not working for me? I mean, yes, it is campaign period, as Joel has said clearly, but it is the politicians, it is the legislative wing that is basically in the campaign period. But the executive wing of it should still be working. The institutions that are actually supposed to be independent, and the word is supposed to be, should still be working. And best believe, if there was a strong opposition, which we definitely do lack now, that would have been championing as we have been doing before, would have, brought this issue up, then government would have been very quick in responding. And the different institutions would have pulled together to actually see how do we forge forward. But I think we need to be at a point where we are saying that even though we don't have opposition, or we don't have a strong opposition for that matter, those who have joined government and were previously in opposition should be able to say, these are some of the solutions we think should work. Okay, but also I need to, you know, whenever we talk about a strong opposition, a number of times we're talking about the former Prime Minister. And for a very long time, he was championing for reforms, and the reforms have happened. And it is only fair that we also now allow him to move on and now start discussing the economical point of view. So now my question then would be, does that mean that without him, nothing can move in the country? I think that would be my honest question, because since the handshake, I really have not seen anybody or any, organization that has stepped up to say, now we are filling in some shoes and we are now going to begin to pick this conversation up and we are going to speak on behalf of Kenyans. And as I think Steve said that we are at a point where Kenyans can no longer speak no. I think Kenyans have the leaders that they deserve, because what has been happening for the past couple of years is that Kenyans are not picking people based on merit. They're not looking at Joel and asking what is Joel's track record. They're looking at it and saying, has Joel been walking around with my party leader? Is Joel from my clan? Is Joel from my tribe? And so we need to come to a point where we are asking, is Victoria a person of integrity? Can I actually have her? Because these are the people that will pass those policies and those laws that Steve is talking about.
All right, let me wrap up with Joel. And yes, I am a person of integrity. But Joel, let me ask you this. I want to shift gears a bit to the nomination exercise that's been going on. And, you know, you're seeing headlines like big names bite the dust. It's a shift in dynamics, you know, on the campaign trail and the political landscape in terms of people who you thought would get tickets are not. You're getting women, young candidates. And what is that saying about the electorate, you know, in terms of the leaders that they want to see come August 9th?
I think that is why I said the answer to the prosperity of this Republic of Kenya will be majorly be the voters and the citizens themselves. And we have seen in the parties whereby they have left the citizens to choose by themselves, we are seeing completely a different shift, because we've seen that there have been several criteria. Now an issue of an opinion poll that has been conducted, we don't know by who, and then we find direct nomination being given. So only we've seen the people who have been thrown out. It is a situation whereby you've left the party and the citizens themselves to choose the leaders of their choice. And this is going to, what has happened here, we are going to see a shift in the 2022 August election, whereby we are going to see a lot of independent candidates who have been disgruntled by how the party has issued certificates. And you're going to make it very difficult even for the citizens. And I'm telling you, Victoria, as things goes by, if the parties continue conducting themselves the way they're conducting themselves, they're going to kill our natures of the party, because in 2027, very many people will want to go for small parties whereby they will not be rigged even before the party primary starts. So this particular situation going to give us a very peculiar situation whereby we are going to see a lot of independent candidates also winning in various parts of this Republic of Kenya, if even those particular parties do not even tell exactly what has happened on the ground. Lastly, even before I finish, in terms of even the fuel crisis, the government also need to step up, because we are seeing that how can you live parastatal, foreign companies owning more than 50% shares of our oil industry in the Republic of Kenya, Rubis, Total, Shell, owning all these things, and we leave our own national oil like dying. You've gone to national oil petrol station. They're actually like kiosk, and these are the hope of the Kenyans. So we really need to ensure that we give hope to the government institution and ensure that we empower them for them to deliver well in terms of what the mandate they are given.
Fantastic, Joe. We have to leave it there. Ruth, Steve, thank you so much for your time. We never have enough time here on Voters Hub, but we have to take a short break. Much more ahead. Keep the conversation going on social media. #VotersHub, #CitizenWeekend. Stay with us.